quiz. Going twice. All right. So now we're dealing with empirical statements. Some empirical statements, some things sound like empirical statements, like when I say that this pen has a mind, it sounds like an empirical statement until you think about it. How would you know if it was true or not true? In principle, there's no way to know. And if that's the case, then I haven't actually said anything. Now, if this thing began speaking to us, right? Then we would pay attention. If it began communicating with us in some way, if there was some testable way of checking that, then it would be an empirical statement. All right. Among the empirical statements, some things are sort of simple facts. And some things are historical statements. For example, Kyle made an announcement today. That's a statement about what happened, right? These are simpler things. Historical statements create their own problems, right? Because if somebody wasn't here, they wouldn't be able to check it anymore except by asking people, right? They could ask us all here. We're all witnesses to that. If we all died, that question wouldn't be answerable to other people. They wouldn't be able to answer it. But there are generalizations. And among the generalizations, there are statements of correlation. And you heard Dr. Gupta make a statement about correlation does not imply causation. We'll be getting to that statement in a second. And causation. And this is going to be an important lesson in this course that many people don't seem to know when they come in and take psychology. And for some reason it's difficult for people because the media, previous education hasn't really taught people how to understand it. So let me tell you about causation and correlation. Correlation is a statement that A and B go together. And the statement, what does it mean? How would you establish it? Through induction. All generalizations are tested through induction. And the kind of induction that you do depends on what type of statement it is among a generalization. A correlational generalization is simply a statement that certain things go together. When A happens, B happens. When A doesn't happen, B doesn't happen. And the statement is a statement that you can predict A from B. Or predict B from A. And causation is a statement that by making something happen, you can cause B to occur. And so there's a directionality of it. Here we're saying A causes B. That doesn't necessarily imply that B causes A. So if I start a fire, it'll create heat. Creating heat might start a fire. You might have cases where A causes B and B causes A, but it may not be the case that the effect necessarily causes the cause. Well, let's get into an example of causation. Correlations are checked by surveys and by showing that you can predict. And causal statements are checked by experiments. In experiments and surveys, you measure things. In experiments, you manipulate and measure. So let's give some examples so that we can understand better. I'm going to describe an experiment doesn't need to be done, but the basic idea is the same, and it will apply when they have an idea for Ebola. I'm going to deal with the problem of strep throat. Of all the world, not everybody has strep. What's strep Strep throat, that means you have an infection with the Streptococcus bacterium. Streptococcus bacterium can, one variety of a strep bacterium, it gets into the skin, it's called the flesh-eating bacteria. When strep attacks the throat, you have a strep throat. What are the symptoms? A person runs a fever, look in their throat, you see white patches in there, you scrape it off, put it on a slide, look at it through the microscope, recognize a certain bacterium there called Streptococcus bacterium, and the doctor will diagnose, yep, you have strep throat. So some people in the world have strep, and there are a bunch of other people that have, they're not all healthy, but they don't have strep throat. We take a group of people who've been diagnosed as having strep throat, we want to check if penicillin is beneficial for people that have strep throat. So here's our question. Now, as I say, this study's been done, doesn't need to be repeated again. It's been repeated many times already, but it would be the same if we're investigating a drug to treat Ebola or HIV diseases that we don't have cures for. We've got a lot of diseases we don't have cures for. Very little progress has been made with cancer. You guys know the difference between love and herpes?
Herpes is forever.
Herpes is forever. Hopefully, you don't want to speak up to say that too loud. Don't put it on your Valentine card. Sounds like it should go on a comic Valentine, but it's not a good idea, I can testify to that. All right. So some people have strep, and what we're going to do is randomly assign them conditions. And by random assignment, I mean do something like toss a coin, and if it's heads, they go in one group, and tails, they go in the other. And one group is going to be in the treatment group. The other group is going to be in a control group. The treatment group is going to get the drug. Control group is not going to get the drug. The difference between the treatment group and the independent group is called the independent variable. I'm going to call it IV, so IV in medicine refers to intravenous, usually means something they stick into your vein, into the vein. But IV for us is going to refer to the independent variable. Now a variable is something that varies. So it has variation, it's not all the same. So variable, you can't say, heads or tails, heads is the variable. No, heads or tails is the variable. And in this case, treatment versus control group is the variable. The treatment group is going to get the penicillin. The control group is going to get a placebo. What's a placebo?
Sugar pill.
Placebo is a sugar pill. It doesn't have to be sugar, but it's a pill that does not contain the penicillin. So a placebo, I'm going to erase the homework assignment here. Number 5, part 2. Now, why do we want to have a placebo?
To test if it's actually a disease or if it's a mental thing.
To check if the penicillin actually is curing the disease or if it's a mental thing. So what does he mean by a mental thing? So let me just explain to you. What he means by a mental thing is something like voodoo. You folks know about voodoo? Voodoo is an old religion, and it works. Voodoo works this way. You can go to Louisiana or certain places where they still practice voodoo and get a mojo hand to do certain things. So some guy's afraid, you know, he doesn't have any dates, would like to meet women, do better, but he feels unattractive, and so they get him a mojo hand. Basically, they make a little pouch, they put some stuff in it, secret things. Sometimes they'll tell you the things that are in there. There's blood of a chicken in here. There's a bone of a salamander. You know, I put a couple feathers from a rare bird. I put your fingernail. You know, stuff like that. You wrap it up, you wear that around your neck. It'll make you attractive to women. The guy puts it around his neck. He's wearing a thing that's making him attractive to women. Now he feels confident. Now he is attractive, right? He meets somebody. Did the mojo hand do it, or was it a mental thing, as he put it? Maybe it just gave him confidence. Turns out if you randomly assign people to conditions, in one group you give them a mojo hand that tells them they're attractive, and another group you give them a mojo hand that tells them they're ugly. The group that gets the mojo hand that makes them, they feel better about themselves when you ask them later. Kind of a mental thing. And you can have bad voodoo too. Bad voodoo, you guys know about bad voodoo. You make a little doll out of wax or something like that, and then you go tell the guy that you dislike, you see, I've made this. This is you. And when you had your hair cut, I collected some of the hair and I put it on there, so that's your hair. And I got your toenails and I put it on here, that's your toenails. And tonight, while you're trying to sleep, I'm going to take this needle here, see, I'm going to heat it up and I'm going to stick it in there. The guy goes out and he has pizza or whatever it is, you know. All of a sudden he goes, oh God, they're stabbing me with that needle, you know, and starts to worry about it. Maybe give himself an ulcer. So, that's voodoo. So, the knowledge that you're getting a treatment might help. It's called the placebo effect. So placebo is usually better than nothing. If you tell people, you know, what's wrong with you? The doctor says, oh, I don't know, you're a hopeless case, I guess. Just go home and die. You know, it's bad news for the person. If you tell a person, on the other hand, wait, I have something that'll cure you, here, take this. Now, if you tell the person, I don't have anything for you, they go out and they go wandering around the streets, and there's somebody who says, oh yeah, I can cure you, let me take you to my practitioner in the back alley, you know. Person is going to cut off a toe, that'll be good for you. You might get an infected toe. So people go and they subject themselves to dangerous things if they don't get a placebo. So they actually act on the knowledge. The knowledge that they're not being treated sends them to other quacks that are willing to treat them. If the regular doctor says, I haven't got anything for you, they'll go to a quack who says, oh yeah, I've got something for you. So that's the reason to have a placebo. It isn't just the knowledge you're getting something versus nothing. It's actually getting the penicillin. And so they will manufacture the pills by the same company. We'll stamp out the pills so they look exactly the same. There's either the penicillin plus the starchy binding ingredients are stamped out in these pills, or they just stamp the starchy ingredients that bind the penicillin together and make a pill out of it. And that's the other type of pill. Now there's another part of this too, and that's what's known as the levels of blindness. And so let me tell you about the levels of blindness. Now, the word blind is not being used to refer to the idea that the people are sightless or their eyes have been put out or anything like that. But it means they don't know what they're getting. They don't know whether they're getting the penicillin or the placebo. So the first level of blindness is that the patient or the subject, sometimes we call them participants in psychological research, or the client in clinical research, is blind. What do we mean by they're blind? We mean they don't know whether they got the penicillin or the placebo. So they sign up for this study and they're told, you're signing up for a study of strep throat, we don't really know how to cure it. This is at a time when they don't know how to cure it. If they did it today, they'd be deceiving people if they said that. They said, you know, you've got Ebola, we don't really know how to cure Ebola. We're going to either give you the new experimental treatment or you'll get a placebo. All right, the person will say, yeah, okay, let's give it a try. So the person doesn't know. That's what we mean by they're blind. They don't know whether they're in the treatment group or the placebo condition. They signed up for the study being told, you're either going to get the new drug we're trying or you're going to get a placebo. Now there's a second level of blindness that we want. We want the doctor or the person who manipulates the independent variable to be blind. Why do you want the doctor to be blind with respect to the manipulation? Well, you saw Dr. Sanjay Gupta in the little excerpt I just showed you say that the doctors know the scientific method. Unfortunately, that's not true. Doctors aren't required to learn the scientific method. They learn some medicine, they learn some biology, but they're not necessarily taught the scientific method. And so doctors don't always have the same ethical principles as scientists. We'll have to talk about that in a bit. One of the ethical principles that differs between doctors and scientists is that doctors don't understand the point of the experiment necessarily. How many are in pre-med? Pre-med, pre-dental, pre-nursing or nursing majors? Nobody in here is in the medical. Is there any other medical area? Kinesiology even, or yeah, phys ed, so they'll give you some of that. They'll be teaching you some physiology, and you'll need to know something about sports injuries, a little bit about psychology of sports, and some medical related things. A lot of placebos in sport. All right. Talk about those a bit later. They're called superstitions sometimes. But the reason you don't want the doctor to know is that, and this is one of the, it's what's happening with cancer research. We've made almost no progress in the field of cancer research for the last 30 years. Why? Because what are the treatments that we have right now for cancer? Well, chemo, you try to poison the cancer. Surgery, you try to cut it out. Radiation, you try to burn it out. Radiation. Sometimes heat, but sometimes nuclear radiation. Radioactive radiation being used. Sometimes microwaves are used to try to burn it out. You can assign people to conditions, and you have an experiment in which you randomly assign people to conditions, and the doctor happens to be a surgeon and believes in the surgery. And he sees that he's got a 90-year-old getting surgery. And he says, oh, 90-year-olds, they don't do very well in surgery. They have a tendency to get infections, post-operative infections, or to die because of the anesthesia. You give them, you give them something that puts them to sleep, and next thing you know, they don't wake up, their heart stops. So I would like to take the 90-year-old and put that person out of the surgery group and into the radiation group. And I'm going to take a radiation patient who's 19, because that's a better candidate for surgery, and put that person into my group, getting the surgery. Now let me ask you this, who lives longer, a 90-year-old or a 19-year-old? I mean, from here on out. We know that the 90-year-old lived at least to the age of 90. The 19-year-old may not make it that far. But from here on, who's going to live longer? The 19-year-old or the 90-year-old? Right, the 19-year-old. So we've just automatically made it so we're going to learn that the surgery is good because we've got young people getting the surgery, right? Why do we have random assignment of conditions instead of let the doctor decide which ones should get the penicillin and which ones shouldn't? Because the doctor that believes in penicillin is going to put the healthy ones in to get the penicillin to make it look, to create a self-fulfilling prophecy. And the doctor believes in surgery is going to put the young people in to get the surgery, and the old people are going to go in the other group. And so that's one of the reasons we're not learning anything in the area of cancer. Because the doctors are overruling the random assignment of conditions. But we're going to say more about the random assignment, what it does for us. So that's the independent variable. And that's why we want the doctors not to know, because we don't want them overruling the random assignment of condition. There's another reason you don't want the doctors to know. What's that?
They're gonna assume that whatever symptoms the person is like whatever they're observing is just because of their theory, because they're biased.
Yeah, I think you're getting into, so we'll get to your point a bit later, because I'm going to add a third level of blindness. So in the case where you have what's known as a double-blind study, and maybe the doctor is also the judge of the dependent variable, you don't want that judge to interpret the symptoms conveniently. That's the point she's making right there. But there's another reason, and that's that the doctors, see, here's how we're going to do this study. We're going to manufacture these bottles of pills, and every bottle of pill is going to have a number on the side. Some of them contain penicillin, and some of them contain just placebo. And these bottles of pills are in a big box, and they've all been stirred up randomly. That's one of the important things. You have to stir the balls. Sometimes they forget to stir the balls when they do bingo or random stuff, and then it's not random anymore. So you stir up these bottles of pills, and the doctor is told, give each patient a bottle of pills. Now, if it said on it, somewhere there's a table of numbers that says, bottle number 1, that contains penicillin. Bottle number 2, that's penicillin. Bottle number 3, that's placebo. Bottle number 4, that's penicillin. Bottle number 5, that's penicillin. Bottle number 6, that's placebo. Bottle number 7, that's placebo. Bottle number 8, that's placebo. Bottle number 9, that's penicillin. So they're just numbered randomly. Now, if the doctor knew, then they would look at it and say, oh, you're in the placebo condition. Too bad for you. You know, go down to Mexico and get Laetrile. For those that don't know, Laetrile is peach poison. It's a poison made from peach pits, contains arsenic, and some people thought it was medicinal for a while. And when people don't get treated, they run to Mexico and buy something that's dangerous. Like Laetrile. Laetrile was thought to be beneficial for cancer patients that were told they were in a placebo condition. So this is the reason not to let the doctors know, because they may give away the placebo effect. So the patient isn't blind anymore because the doctor wasn't blind. So they want the doctor to say, I don't know whether you've got a bottle of penicillin or placebo, but go home and take it religiously. Take it every day. It may do you some good. It may not do you any good. We don't know yet. But it's important you take it. Then we follow them up. So let's say we had 200 patients here, and 100 of them, 100 of the bottles say penicillin, 100 of them are in the treatment group. This is the independent variable. We now measure the dependent variable. And the dependent variable is what we measure that we think is the effect. So we think penicillin versus placebo is the cause, and we think the dependent variable in this case is going to be alive or dead. We want to know whether you're better off, and I'm going to make a value judgment. When I said, is it beneficial? I'm going to say being alive is good, and so that's a benefit. And being dead is not good, so I'm making a value judgment. That's what I mean when I say beneficial. And in this case, beneficial is defined as being more likely to be alive at the end of the study if you get it than if you don't. And let's say it comes out this way. 80 of the people that got the penicillin are alive, and 20 of them in the control group are alive. That's looking pretty good. Not 100, right? But it's 80 is better than 20, isn't it? More people lived who got the penicillin, right? I know what you're thinking. You're thinking to yourself, that could have happened by chance. I mean, if I had 200 cards and I printed them up like playing cards and I wrote on them, 100 of them I wrote alive and 100 of them I wrote dead, because we know that 100 people lived. At the end of the study, 100 of them lived. 80 out of these 100 and 20 out of these 100, 100 of them lived. So we have 200 cards, and 100 of them lived and 100 of them died, and I shuffle them up. Shuffle up all these cards, and I deal out two hands. Could it come out that one hand has 80 and the other has 20? Could that happen by chance? Yeah. Could it come out that 100 come out in one and pile and 0 in the other? Yeah, it could happen. Could come out 50-50. Could come out that 0 in this group and 100 in that group. Couldn't that happen by chance? Could happen by chance, couldn't it? That's what one of the things that statistics is for. And so in statistics, what we do is we calculate what's the probability of the data given the null hypothesis. What's the null hypothesis?